Alright, so our last lesson we went over and we said the letters of the musical alphabet were A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And those were what these white notes on the keyboard. So let's just go ahead, or these white keys on the keyboard. Let's go ahead and fill these in. This is like your keyboard of your piano or anything like that. Alright. Now if our piano kept going to the right or left, now after this E we would have an F, and then we'd have a G. I have a little black key right here too. Okay, and then this, if we went this way right here, this F, there would be an E on that side, right? And then these could go indefinitely on either side, you know, as long as the keyboard was big enough and kept going. So we went over what these keys are here, these white keys on our piano, and we said these were natural keys. Now, we want to find out what these black keys right here are called. And to be able to name those, we need to go over a concept called half steps. Now, these are called half steps. And the best way to describe a half step is the very next key on the keyboard. So if you went up a half step or down a half step, up a half step would be the very next key up, and down a half step would be the very next key down. Let's take this B for example, okay? It's B. Now we started at B, and we went up a half step, which is the very next note. We would be at C right here. So we can basically say that B to C is a half step up. And we can go down to, we can say C to B. C going down, which is going down, to B would be a half step down. Okay? Now we can do the same thing with D, or let's do E. Okay, so we said we have an F right here if our keyboard kept going. And so E, so our E note to an F note right here. So we go E to F. It's a half step up. And you can say F to E is a half step down. Okay, I'll just do that to save some room. So we said half steps are the very next note on the keyboard. Now it's easy for B and C and E and F, as you can see, because those notes right here, they don't have a black key right here. Okay? So there's no black key, and there's no black key right here either. Now, when you come to, say, the G note, let's look at the G note, okay? Let's try to find what this note is right here, because we haven't found out what that note is called yet, okay? Let's find out what that black key right there is called. Now, it's between a G, and it's between an A. Let me go ahead and redraw that A real quick. Oops. It's between a G and an A. We don't know what that note is. Well, we have to use these things called sharps and flats. And a sharp looks just like this. Looks like a little tic-tac-toe or a little pound sign on your phone. And a sharp, a flat, looks like a little B. Okay? Easy way to remember these are, look at sharps. You can see they're kind of pointy on the edges, like, you know, they're kind of sharp. And flats are round like little B, and they're pretty flat, like you wouldn't get cut on a flat. Now sharps basically mean you take your note, and if you have a sharp on it, you raise it a half step up. Half step, okay? And a flat means you take your note and you go down a half step. That's going to make much more sense in a second. So let's go back to our example of, we have this note right here, this note right here. We want to find out what this note is. So it's not a G, it's between a G and an A, right? Well, we already said that this is a half step up, right? It's the very next note on the keyboard from G to this black key right here. And we said a sharp means you take your note and you raise it up half a step. So this note right here, we can call that a G sharp, okay? This key right here is called G sharp because it's not quite a G, it's a half step above G. So it's going to be a G sharp. Now we can call this black key right here a different name too, because it's between G and A. If we take an A, and it's not quite as low as a G, but it's in between right here. Well, it's like an A, but it's a half step down. See, it's half step down, going from right to left. We can call that note an A flat because a flat means you take your note and it's a half step down. So we call this note an A flat. You may be thinking, what is this note, or what is this key? What is it called? Is it a G sharp or an A flat? Well, the answer is it's both. Now when we start getting a little bit deeper into theory, the note will be called a G sharp or an A flat depending on what key you're in and the circumstances. But for right now, we can just say that's the same exact note, okay? Now when one note, or when two notes right here, they have different names, right? We have a G sharp. Oops, let me get that. We have a G sharp. And we have an A flat. Now it's the same key on the keyboard, right here, but they have two different names. These are two different notes. They're said to be enharmonic. And that just means that these notes right here have different names, but on a keyboard or a piano, they're on the same note, same part on the keyboard. So if I say play an A flat, you would play this note right here, right? That little black key right there. You would play, I say play an A flat, you would play this key right here. If I say play G sharp, you would also play that same note. So it just means that they have different names, but they're the same note on the piano. That means they're enharmonic. Now by using these little half step sharps and flats, you can go and name every one of these keys on the keyboard. Now take this D for example. Between D and E, now you want to say the very next note above the D, which would be a half step up, and we said a sharp means your note is a half step up, so we'd say that is a D sharp. This note right here is a D sharp. It's not quite a D, it's a half step above D. But we can also call it note an E flat because it's not quite an E, but it's a half step down from E, and we said that's what flats do, it makes it half step down. So this note can also be an E flat right here. And these two notes right here, while they have two different names, they're the same exact note on the keyboard, so we'd call these enharmonic. Alright, well I'll see you guys in the next lesson.